My people are gone. The few remaining Kaminoans scattered throughout the galaxy are of no importance to me.
Officially, there never was a clone rebellion on Camino.
What's up, Meta Nerds? With this breakdown of the Kaminoan species, we'll make sure we understand everything we can about one of the most important people in the galaxy. So let's start by heading to their homeworld.
According to my information, it should appear in this quadrant here, just south of the Rishi Maze.
Camino was the 5th planet in a system of 13 located in the far reaches of wild space, beyond the Outer Rim. It orbited an aging star south of the Rishi Maze, a dwarf satellite galaxy in a decaying orbit within a loosely grouped cluster of unnamed stars. The planet was accompanied by 3 moons, including Karasa, and Camino itself had a molten core, a rocky mantle, and a silicate rock crust. Long ago, climate changes submerged its continents, leaving the planet covered by a vast global ocean, with only a few mountain peaks emerging as islands, which were constantly lashed by heavy rainfall. Though despite its reputation for ceaseless storms and powerful lightning, Camino's surface was not always drenched. This is a bit of a myth, as we can see during the CIS attack to secure a DNA sample of Jango Fett. But this myth comes from the fact that somewhere on Camino there usually is a storm, and these are so large that they're visible from space. And while officially located in wild space, Camino is also considered an extragalactic planet due to its proximity to the Rishi Maze. Camino has a rotation period of 27 standard hours and an orbital period of 463 standard days, while being classified as a terrestrial planet with a diameter of 19,270 kilometers and has a Type 1 atmosphere, making it breathable to most species, with an overall temperate climate. It's home to unique fauna such as the Iwa, the Camino spongeworm, and the Comorodon sea dragon, while their population would eventually reach around 1 billion, with a surprising amount of diversity with Arcona, Sinatine, and Togruta populations calling Camino home. Though of course they would still be a very small minority of the population. It seems to be like having an embassy, or like a small part of the city of a certain type of people, like Togruta town. In Kaminoan mythology, the god-beast Protoss reigned supreme over all the oceans during the time predating the rise of the second sun. Protoss's dominance was first tested by the great titan Melkor, followed by the Legion Kikla, both of whom failed to defeat him. Emboldened by these triumphs, Protoss grew arrogant and blocked an Iwapod from migrating to warmer waters. Struggling to survive in the frigid winter seas, the Iwa ultimately defeated Protoss through the self-sacrifice of one of their own. That is all of the details we have on that story, but all researchers agree with the fact that since this mythology has persisted in the highly scientific Kaminoan mind, it is most likely symbolic of some true history in their past. So as we learn that history, try and think of how this tale of titans failing to defeat this god beast, for that ultimate enemy Protoss to be defeated by an Iwa, which would seem much lower on the order of power, may point out that Kaminoans saw their own fate on this world. And quick shout out to KikiGrotto.com. Everything you buy here helps support the channel. They give us a percentage of it. They have tons of amazing things. These are not official Legos, but that allows you to save on cost and have a ton of different, really unique creations. Obviously, Lego's never going to do military type things, and there is a ton of different options from real wars based on real, vehicles, weapons, artillery pieces, stuff like that. My cart has a ton of cool things. I got amazing space things. This city of Athens is amazing, 1 foot wide, 8 inches tall. Really cool stuff. The only thing with this site, don't want to be the Grinch and ruin your Christmas, be sure to check the shipping times. They do have really kind of lengthy shipping times, but I think it's worth the wait. The builds are solid. I have a ton. There's a bunch back there too, and a ton more I plan on building. So be sure to check them out using the link down below and you'll get 10% off. Thanks again, Kiki Grotto. Around 19,000 DBY, Camino experienced dramatic climate shifts that caused its extensive glaciers to melt, leading to the submersion of its continents beneath a global ocean. And faced with this cataclysmic event, the resourceful Kaminoans adapted to their new environment, surviving the Great Flood through ingenuity and resilience. And to sustain their population and secure their future, they turned to their advanced cloning technologies, a practice that would become synonymous with these people. This mastery of cloning not only ensured their survival, but eventually positioned the Kaminoans as renowned geneticists in the galaxy. Their expertise sought after for creating and engineering custom life. They themselves evolved from aquatic amphibian creatures native to the vast oceans of Camino, a heritage that is reflected in their physiology, with their tall, slim shape allowing for efficient swimming, while their glassy, glazed, almond-shaped eyes enable them to see clearly in murky or dark underwater conditions. Their eyes also had the unique ability to perceive colors in the ultraviolet spectrum, meaning their seemingly white dwellings were actually decorated in shades invisible to most species, including humans. while their semi-luminescent porcelain-like skin, reminiscent of mother of pearl, further reflected their aquatic origins. But they did become land-dwelling creatures at some point, and so perhaps it's something like the aquatic ape hypothesis, which posits that the reason that modern humans look so different from the great apes, having so much less hair, is that they were more adapted to an aquatic habitat, spending a lot of time on the coasts, and so were bipedal, but have minimal hair like we see with aquatic mammals. Because of course, the Kaminoans do end up standing on 2 legs, they have their digitigrade stance and slender legs, which is believed to have adapted for movement on firm seabeds, but millions of years later, they would be used to walk down these completely artificial facilities. Female Kaminoans were bald, whereas males displayed head crests and fin ridges on the rear of their small, bulbous skulls. They matured rapidly, reaching full adulthood by the age of 11, and maintaining their physical prime until around 40. Signs of aging begin to appear around 80, although some, like Kinaha, a genetically altered Kaminoan designed for prolonged hyperspace travel, was known to have reached over 3,000 years. There's a really tragic implication here, that they may have been on the brink of near immortality at least for their own species, but the Sith dragged them into the Clone Wars, and as we'll see, this would forever alter Camino, definitely significantly setting back their scientific progress. As for their personality, they were known for their reserved demeanor, rarely displaying outward exuberance or joy, and they regarded the clone troopers as their crowning achievement and prioritized their work over all else. Despite their isolationist tendencies, they engaged with Offworlders when it proved profitable, a mindset shaped by the Great Flood that would forever alter the collective consciousness of these people. Rather than seeking aid from the Galactic Republic during that crisis, they chose to adapt their genetic code and environment, deeming self-reliance safer than external assistance. Perhaps it's because war and slavery were a constant throughout the Galactic Republic, something that the Republic claimed to fight, while the vast trade network seemed to always promote this in reality. They came to the conclusion that they cannot be reliant on off-world supplies, though they didn't view themselves as inherently superior to other species. Instead, they simply considered the planets and civilizations a distraction and a false crutch, believing that they needed to make sure that they could find everything they need for Kaminoans on Camino. This era saw an almost complete dedication to advancing science and reason, though they maintained a cultural connection to their past and often made pilgrimages to the sunken ruins of their ancient cities. The style of the ancient Kaminoan cities are said to look a lot like what we see today, and I believe that the whole purpose of visiting their lost civilizations was so that they could be reminded of just how cruel nature could be, that they were utterly on their own and needed to come up with a system to make sure that they didn't go extinct next time, knowing that their species had barely survived at all. And this is connected to their sort of morality or philosophy. I said that they didn't view other species as inferior, but they did split the world into 2 types of people, and the only good ones were those who focused on self-improvement, who pushed technological progress that could help others. Anyone viewed as lazy or useless was treated as inferior, a eugenicist sort of view on all species, and that these were like diseased or unproducing parts of a plant, which should simply be cut off and disposed of, maybe at best used as compost that would fuel the other more productive plants. Though they had a great poker face and manners, as they could literally be looking at someone and thinking about how they should be manipulated into a sort of biological slave, or experimented on as a sort of sacrifice to science, they would still treat that inferior being with the utmost of respect, being completely courteous and accommodating, though many people did report that they felt that they were being viewed as mere products. And to be fair, if that's the right word to use, they did apply this same ruthlessness to themselves. They established a strict caste system, which was distinguished by eye color. Those with gray eyes occupied the highest caste and managed administration, while yellow-eyed Kaminoans handled skilled tasks, and blue-eyed individuals performed manual labor and menial work. Rarely, Kaminoans were born with green eyes, which marked them as genetically inferior and a threat to the orderly structure of their society. Somehow this was proven to be statistically significant enough that all green-eyed people were such a threat to their genetic stock, that the danger of letting them live far outweighed letting them be mere laborers, and so all green-eyed Kaminoans were exterminated right after birth. Though we should assume that once they got the genetics dialed in, there were probably no green eyes born, and once that happened, your whole family was likely locked into a caste forever, removing any genetic randomness that might have seen you hoping for a gray-eyed son or daughter. Not much is known about the internal dynamics of Kaminoan culture, but certain practices, such as the emotional dance called Nara, do hint at one of the rare displays of a non-purely rational behavior. And there was a time where different groups existed within their society, such as the monk-like Kaminoan ascetics and the armor smiths, who were in a strange way connected to their mystical past, the primitive antediluvian Kaminoans, as forging the armor and weaponry was seen as a distinct type of art, somehow categorically different from all the other sciences. And contrary to a common belief, Kaminoans could exhibit force sensitivity, as seen with Kinaha, a Kaminoan Jedi Master who sought protection from Kal Skirata through a courier. Although it was widely assumed that Kaminoans were not force sensitive due to Kosai's demand for Jedi blood in cloning experiments, it is now thought that this misconception stemmed from Kaminoan arrogance and a reluctance to do this type of experiment on their own kind. Once they felt that they had completely mastered their civilization, every little variable of their own genome and their cities was under their control, then we see them to begin offering their cloning expertise and genetic engineering services in exchange for essential imports. The clients fortunate enough to access Kaminoan craftsmanship received flawless clones tailored to their specific needs. And while they took immense pride in their scientific achievements, the Kaminoans paid little heed to the ethics of their work or its consequences. Clones produced on Camino labored in mining colonies like Sub-Tyrell, or served in private armies across the galaxy. Yet the Kaminoans remained singularly focused on advancing their scientific reputation. The most infamous Kaminoan project was of course the creation of the Galactic Republic's clone army. Using Mandalorian bounty hunter Jango Fett as the genetic template, they engineered and trained a massive force of clone soldiers at the request of Jedi Master Sifo Dyas. Their initial efforts yielded 12 specimens, half of which failed to survive incubation. Classified as null, after 2 years of flash learning proved too independent and unpredictable for the structured military roles the Republic required. Determining them unsuitable, the Kaminoans planned to terminate the null clones. However, Kal Skirata intervened, rescuing the 6 and training them as intelligence operatives. Despite his efforts, many clones were not spared, and the Kaminoans maintained a strict policy of terminating entire batches or individual clones that failed to meet their exact standards. Anything deviant was destroyed, at least as a rule. While of course some bad batches would slip through or be trained in a totally different style, leveraging these unique traits to fill a very niche role. The Kaminoans' critical role in creating the clone army earned them a seat in the Galactic Senate, represented by Senator Bertoni. A staunch advocate for the continued production of clone troopers to fuel the Republic's war against the Separatists, Bertoni often clashed politically with Senator Padme Amidala's coalition, which opposed prolonged militarization of the Republic. After the First Battle of Camino, where the Republic successfully defended the planet and its cloning facilities, production continued to sustain the Grand Army. But following Order 66, the Empire seized control of the facilities, claiming that they didn't want it to fall into enemy hands and spawn a new war. Resentful of Imperial rule, some Kaminoans began secretly engineering a new, more advanced clone army. Learning of this rebellion, Darth Vader dispatched the 501st Legion.
Officially, there never was a clone rebellion on Camino. Unofficially, approximately 20 years after we were created, a special detachment of the Imperial 501st Legion was dispatched to Camino with orders to eradicate an army of clones that had been bred to take arms against the Empire. Our mission commander, an expert on the inner workings of Camino, was a young bounty hunter named Boba Fett.
After the fall of the Galactic Republic to the Rebel Alliance, the Kaminoans chose to align with the New Republic, hoping to avoid further conflict. Under the NR, they prospered and even contributed to the fight against the Yuuzhan Vong, playing a vital role in the galaxy's recovery and defense. Though now, in the new canon, there is a very different series of events. Though in a way, the main essentials of their domination by the Empire are similar. So picking up after Order 66, Admiral Williff Tarkin informed Lama Su that Emperor Palpatine no longer supported their cloning operations, and Su was concerned that with the Empire's shift to enlisted soldiers trained under Vice Admiral Rampart, it would all make the clones and the Kaminoans obsolete. Determined to secure their future, he proposed creating a new, superior clone to replace the degrading Jango Fett genotype in hopes of retaining the Empire's support. While on Coruscant, Senator Bertoni, skeptical of the Empire's intentions and critical of Sue's efforts to align with it, lost her position in the Imperial Senate after uncovering Rampart's misuse of Senate-approved funds for Camino. Rampart had redirected these resources to other Imperial programs, raising suspicions and leaving Bertoni increasingly intrusive into Imperial affairs. Eventually, the Empire shut down the Kaminoan cloning facilities, withdrawing all clone troopers, cadets, embryos, materials, and essential Kaminoan personnel such as Nala Se. After removing these valuables, the Empire destroyed the facilities, including Taipoka City. The Kaminoan survivors were forcibly imprisoned, deported, and scattered across the galaxies, leaving only a few survivors, while the Empire transferred its cloning operations to Mount Tantus on Wayland, where Nala Se was coerced into continuing her work under Imperial control. Senator Rio Chuchi later exposed the destruction of Camino, but Palpatine deflected blame onto Rampart and the clones, using the scandal to push through the Imperial Defense Recruitment Bill, which would connect a large percentage of the galactic population to the military, as becoming an enlisted trooper was one of the most secure jobs in the galaxy. As the Imperial era progressed, fewer Kaminoans were seen across the galaxy, a change that disturbed pirate Hondo Ohnaka. While some Kaminoans joined the Alliance to restore the Republic, their reputation for being amoral and their role in the Empire's rise, and of course the Clone Wars, caused great tension with fellow rebels. Meanwhile, the Empire secured a monopoly on Kaminoan cloning tech. The tech that was the physical manifestation of their entire culture, meant to ensure that they never went extinct, to put themselves beyond the cruel chaos of nature, and maybe even make themselves immortal, had ended up only putting a target on their back, and was now being used by Emperor Palpatine's Sith Eternal cult, using advanced strand-casting methods to create cloned bodies, ensuring Palpatine's spirit could inhabit a new vessel, all aimed at making Sidious immortal. That's it for the breakdown. As for behind-the-scenes facts, it's always bugged me that the lore tries to fit it into the galactic map, I think just for convenience and to have a place for everything. It's positioned at grid square S15, which is about 70,000 light years from the core, while other sources, and obviously the most important source, the movie, are explicit that it's outside of the galaxy. Developing the Kaminoan species was a part of progressing CGI creation in general, as it really pushed the technology of the time to make completely CGI creations for Attack of the Clones. Their appearance was inspired by the aliens from Steven Spielberg's Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which themselves draw from the real-world gray alien archetype in folklore. At one point during development, there were design notes suggesting that the Kaminoans might be luminescent, like glowing angelic creatures, but obviously they meant with this more aquatic alien look. And there was also the idea that they would have these androgynous voices, but that was abandoned too. And Jedi Master Yarael Poof was actually removed from Attack of the Clones due to his resemblance to the Kaminoans, and George Lucas felt that his inclusion might confuse the audience. And like I said, seeing the Kaminoans throughout the galaxy became increasingly rare over the years. But in LEGO Star Wars, 3 of them can be spotted near Jango Fett's quarters. Stepping on the lit circles can trigger a hidden feature that turns the room into a disco dance floor, with the Kaminoans rushing to the floor and begin dancing to a disco remix of the Star Wars main title. Please hit that like button if you made it this far. It really is the best way to help me out and help promote lore over drama here on YouTube. So please hit that like button, subscribe to see more, comment suggestions, and check out these other videos, I'm sure you'll like them. But most important of all, remember, there's always a bigger fish. So while you may be able to manipulate others at will, a greater Sith Lord might come along and manipulate you. And the Force will be with you. Always.